Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here is your review. I'm going to walk through this step by step, little by little. It's going to be a little bit painful for those of you who know what you're doing. But I highly encourage you to continue watching, keep up with it. Alright, it's going to be helpful for you to see this. Alright. Number 1, 18x to the third over 12x to the second. 18 and 12, if you take out a 6 from each of those, you can almost see it like this. 6 times 3 over 6 times 2, with that x to the third and the x squared. Those 6's will cancel, and x to the third over x squared just leaves you with an x on top, right there. Alright, that's number 1. Oops. Alright, next. I don't know how to drive this thing, I guess. Alright, number 2. Looks a little bit messy because it's kind of got a little bit of number 4 with it, but all this stuff up here is number 2. So, your first step in factoring, in simplifying, is always to factor. Gave away the answer there. So, I factored this, what multiplies to 24, but adds to a positive 10. So, that will give me 6 and 4. 6 times 4 is 24, positive 6 plus positive 4 is 10. So, those are my numbers that go second. I know I need an x times an x to make that x squared. X squared minus 16, you should notice by now that that is a special case. If you do not, you need to get some practice in factoring. Alright? Factors down into x plus 4 and x minus 4. Remember that in order for that middle term, how normally when you factor you have 3 terms like this, remember that in order for that middle term to cancel, you need to have the positive and the negative version. Alright? So, if we've got that going on, we can cancel out our x plus 4 and our x plus 4, which just leaves us with x plus 6 and x minus 4. Alright, number 3. This one I did quick and easy. The first thing you look for in factoring is common factors. That should be your first step every single time. Even when you're looking at something like this, what is the common factors? See if there's any common factors each time. Even between these 3, even between those 2, alright? Every time. The common factor here is x. So I took out an x, leaving me with 2x plus 1. I canceled this x with the x on the bottom, which leaves me with my final answer, 2x plus 1 over that 4. Number 4, this one's a little bit messier because you do have these coefficients in front, which means that you do need to use the magic x to factor. So, taking a look, let me erase some of that mess out of the way. Alright. 2, okay, so 2 times 3 goes in the top there, 6x squared. And what makes 5x but multiplies to 6x squared? 3 and 2. So I put those in there, put my 2x with my first term, and my 3x with my last term. Then I factored out what I could, which was a 2x from the first terms, leaving me with an x plus 1. And if you factor out a 3 from this, then you get also x plus 1. So, if you write what you have left and what the double is, this is your factored form, which I put over here. On the bottom, we've got 4x plus 4 minus 3. Again, we've got a coefficient in front of our x, which means we have to use the magic x. We don't have any other choice. Alright, the multiplication of the first and then the last, negative 12x squared, that middle term. So what multiplies to negative 12x squared but adds to 4x? A negative 2x and a 6x. So I paired my 4x squared, my first term, with that 6x. And I paired my last term, negative 3, with my negative 2x. Don't forget that x part. I saw that in a couple of factoring summatives. Alright, so then your next step is to pull out the double and what's left. And I rewrote that over here so we could better see what could cancel, which is this 2x plus 3 and 2x plus 3 will cancel, leaving me with x plus 1 over 2x plus 1, which is right here. Alright, that's the simplifying. Now we have to perform the operation. So, the operation here is multiplication. But the first thing in every single one of these problems is to look for factoring opportunities. Alright? Those opportunities are going to open up opportunities for you to cancel. So, 2x minus 6. I just start at the top of the first one, and I move on from there. So top of the first one, can we factor? Yes, we can factor out a 2, leaving me with x minus 3. Alright, moving on to the bottom of the first, x squared minus 25, you should recognize by now that that is a special case. You need the positive and the negative version in order for that middle term to cancel out. So x plus 5 and x minus 5, the root and the root. Alright, top of the second, we've got x squared plus 6x minus 5. So what multiplies to a positive 5 but adds to a positive 6? A positive 5 and a positive 1. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. X plus 5, x plus 1 are your factors. Down here you should recognize that this is another special case. You've got a root and a root, with a subtraction in the middle. So x plus 3 and x minus 3, remember the positive and negative version. Okay, now that you've got everything factored, now you take a look. What can cancel? I see that down here on the bottom and up here on the top, we've got an x minus 3, so those cancel. Down here on the bottom, we've got an x plus 5, and up here on the top, we've got an x plus 5. Those will also cancel. So that leaves me with a 2, an x plus 1, an x minus 5, and an x plus 3. Okay, number 6. Alright, 12x to the third over 25, 40 over x squared. We're multiplying again, so I look crossways. What can I simplify? Think of it as a fraction. You've got 12 over 9. That's the same as 4 over 3. If we look crossways this way, we've got 40 over 25. If we reduce that fraction, it's 8 over 5. And if we look at our x squareds, our x's, we've got x to the third and x squared, which leaves me with an x on top. So if I multiply straight across, we've got 4 times x times 8. That 4 times 8 gives us 32, with that x on there still. 5 times 3 is 15. Double check to make sure that you reduced everything here. Otherwise you will be able to reduce something here. But 32 over 15 cannot be reduced. Alright. Number 7. Starting at the very beginning, I noticed that I have division. So I have to be careful to flip it and multiply. Alright, so I did just that. I flipped it so that x to the third goes on bottom, 3x to the fifth goes on top, and my first stays the same. So now I look crossways to see what I can simplify. The first thing I noticed, going this way, was my 4 over 8. If I were to simplify that fraction, I'm left with a 2 on bottom, or 1/2. I also noticed that this x squared and x to the third can be simplified with just giving me a single x there. Now pretend that x is still there, so that we can cancel that off later. It's not canceled right now. We've got 3 over 9, which leaves me a 3 on bottom. We've got an x to the 5th over this x over here. You don't only have to go crosswise, go up and down too. Alright, so I canceled out that x and made this x to the 5th x to the 4th, which leaves me with my only green numbers that haven't been crossed out. So x to the 4th and 3 times 2, which is that 6. Alright, moving along. Solving. Do not forget, solving means that you need x equals a number, or whatever your variable is, you need it to equal a number. Alright, number 9. So, I went ahead and I cross-multiplied. So, because I have one proportion and one proportion. So I have x minus 1 times x plus 4. Going this way, we've got x plus 3 times x minus 5. Alright, now, looking more closely, if we multiply all of that out, we get x squared plus a 3x minus a 4. Foiling. You don't just multiply parts. Alright, you've got over here x squared minus 2x minus 15. Now in order to get all my x's on one side, I started by subtracting x squared, but I noticed that that cancels those out, which is kind of nice because x squareds can be kind of a pain. So I am left with then a 3x plus 4, or 3x minus 4, which is negative, by the way, or positive, by the way, which is why I had to subtract here. Just forgot to add in that part. So 3x minus 4, we subtract 3x from both sides, so we get a negative 5x, bring down that 15 and bring down that negative 4, add 15 to both sides there, so we get 11 equals negative 5x, divide by a negative 5 on both sides, you get x equals negative 11 fifths. Alright, number 10. Alright, this has that addition and subtraction in there that might throw you off, but don't let it. You can do this. It's the same thing that you have been doing. Find your least common denominator. For this one, I noticed it was a 4x. I've already got a 4x there. I've got a 4 and a 2. I can make each of those into 4x. Okay? But instead of trying to get my common denominator, I'm just going to multiply everything by my least common denominator. So multiplying by 4x, multiplying by 4x, multiplying by 4x. Okay, here, that cancels. Here, the 4's cancel. Here, the 4 reduces down to a 2, because 4 over 2 is 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So, now I can go through and I can multiply. All I have left there is a 1, plus an x squared, x times x, equals 2 x times x, or x squared. Subtract x from both sides to get all my x's on one side, and I notice I get x squared, just a 1x squared, equals 1. And I know how to solve an equation like that. I just square root both sides. So square rooting, remember, gives you the positive and the negative version. Do not forget that. That is something you need to remember. Alright, so that's your answer. You got x equals a number, so you know you are done. Alright, number 11. This one looks a little bit messy, but don't let it intimidate you too much, okay? You know how to do this. Alright, so if I take a look, I need to find my least common denominator. And any time you see something that can be factored, factor it. Don't hang around and wait for you to have to multiply everything out like a pain. Just factor it. It'll be much easier to work with. So that's what I did here. Right away I factored it. X plus 2 and x plus 3. 3 times 2 makes 6. 2 plus 3 makes 5. So that's my least common denominator also, if you notice. Because this one has an x plus 3, which this one also has, an x plus 2 and an x plus 2. So the least thing that I can multiply by is x plus 2 times x plus 3. So I multiply that everywhere. Then I get to go and cancel, my favorite part. So we cancel the x plus 3's here, one on top, one on bottom, everything's multiplied. I should probably put parentheses there though, so we don't forget that it's not just being multiplied by the x, it's being multiplied by the whole thing. Okay, over here we've got an x plus 2 that will cancel, and here in the middle everything cancels. X plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 3, x plus 3. What does that leave me with? Alright, take a look. We've got this x plus 2 that's still left, and this x minus 1. And since they're multiplied whole to whole, whole part by whole part, you have to write them like this, so that you have to FOIL. Alright, I am left with just a lonely 4 there, because everything here canceled out. And I'm left with a 1 times x plus 3, which is just x plus 3 there. Okay, so from there, I just simplify and I solve. So I'm going to multiply this out, FOIL, not necessarily multiply, I should say FOIL. So x squared plus a 2x minus a 1x gives me an x minus a 2. I've still got that plus 4 hanging on, and then x plus 3 hanging on the other side. Simplifying, or combining like terms, negative 2 plus 4 is a positive 2. Subtracted x from both sides to move this x over there, but I also noticed that that cancels out. So that leaves me with an x squared plus 2 equals 3. Subtract 3 from both sides to get that 3 out of there. I could get my x by itself, x squared by itself, but if you notice, that's not going to help me out. Anytime you have an x squared, you want to try and get everything else to that side, which is the opposite of what you do if you just have an x. If you just have an x, you want everything away from its side. But if you have an x squared, I would take what you've got and move everything to that x squared's side of the equation. Alright, so that's what I'm doing here, subtracting 3 to get that over there. So what am I left with? X squared minus 1. That immediately should spark something in your brain. If it hasn't, you might want to go back and practice factoring. That's a special case. Positive and the negative version with both roots, okay, equals 0. So I can solve. Remember, this is what we did on our summative last. X plus 1 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. Solving for x, we would subtract 1 here and add 1 here. So we get x equals 1 and x equals negative 1. Alright. One more thing before I let you go. The Yankees are playing this weekend. They're playing the Twins all weekend. So I'm sure that watching the Yankees would improve your grade. And look at that, a typo. It will improve your grade. Okay? No, it probably won't. But it might. So you should definitely try watching them this weekend. Alright, if you have any questions about this, about factoring, alright, let me know. Okay? In case you need to email me over the weekend and email any questions, I'm going to put that in here. Don't email me crazy stuff. You guys know better. Alright. There's my email in case you need to email me any questions. You guys have Mrs. Moros's email, and she's there to help you too. Alright. Good luck. I'm hoping very many of you watch this video. And again, if you have any questions, please, please, please let us know. Have an amazing weekend.